Curtindo um podcast, né? Sabe o que você também vai curtir? Saber que o melhor flip de todos os tempos chegou. O novo Samsung Galaxy Z Flip 6, com Flex Cam, que tem zoom automático e faz selfies de 50 megapixels e com bateria estendida para nunca te deixar na mão. Vá a uma loja ou saiba mais em samsung.com.br. Samsung Galaxy Z Flip 6. Galaxy AI chegou.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Go Ahead Tell Me. My name is Carly, and today we are joined by Jacqueline Perez Valencia. Jacqueline is here to talk about her career with the Women's Foundation, the Hispanic Heritage Foundation, and the role she has played in civic engagement. Jacqueline, thank you for taking the time to speak with me today. Can you share with us a little bit about your career and what your current position is?
Of course. Well, thank you so much, Carly, for inviting me.
Yeah.
As mentioned, my name is Jacqueline Perez Valencia. I'm currently the program coordinator for our Solis Policy Institute programs at the Women's Foundation California. I have this will probably, I think, my year anniversary around this time.
Oh, wow.
So I've been there for about a year now. I actually was introduced to the organization back in 2019 when I was a state fellow, and I was able to work with incredible leaders from throughout California to work on a bill. Unfortunately, a pandemic happened and our bill was not picked up by the governor because priorities changed, rightfully so. And but again, still work that I'm very passionate about. And when an opportunity came up, I definitely applied and was able to join the team as staff.
Very cool. And so you actually were just telling me, if I can ask you about this, but you said you had coffee with the mayor. Is that right?
Yeah, it was great. So on the time that I have outside of work, I decided to run for school board here in my community in Pico Rivera. And I've just been getting involved as much more as I can. Today, there was a coffee with the mayor at Tierra Mia, which is like a popular coffee spot. And it was just great to get to know the mayor a lot more, talk to other residents about upcoming projects, and really just learning what is happening in our community and how can we support in any way.
That's awesome. I did see that like much of your work has had to do with like justice for underserved communities. What inspired you to kind of follow that path?
Yeah, I think great question. I think for me, growing up, I always knew that I wanted to do something in service. Growing up, I thought I was going to be a teacher. Loved school. I was that student that always seek to get perfect attendance, that wanted to, you know, not miss school at all, and just wanting to get the most of my education as possible. And I did that thanks to the support of many people, like counselors, mentors. And what I realized is that I was very fortunate to have that network and support system that unfortunately not many other of my peers always had. So I just always wanted to give back in any way I could.
That's awesome. And then I know so it sounds like you've always had a love for education, and that kind of filtered into your career path, right? Because you've done some work with education as well.
Yeah. In college, I studied sociology and business, knowing that I wanted to enter more of the nonprofit space. And focus again in educating. And I got to do that. I got to work in multiple organizations throughout the years now, where I supported students in Washington, D.C. to explore civics and government, and really just use D.C. as a classroom and be able to expose them to opportunities for them. And I've also been able to work at the Hispanic Heritage Foundation based out in Washington, D.C., but local to LA. I got to, for about 2 years, teach computer science to students throughout not only throughout California, but also throughout the country. At that time, we were still doing in-person programming, and I spent a lot of time in different cities, different states, different schools, and just really exposing students to computer science and
Mm.
computer literacy. I've also had the opportunity to bring it a little bit more local. I worked at CD Tech for about a year as well, teaching students about workforce development. They were students that had recently graduated from high school and were in a transition where they weren't sure if college was for them yet, but wanted to get the skills necessary to enter the workforce. So really
Mm.
emphasizing on educating, on building capacity.
That's incredible. And you, your work with the Hispanic Heritage Foundation, that was, you worked with Matt there, right? Was it with like the
Mhm.
coding, like teaching coding and things like that?
Yeah, so I didn't get to work with him. I was there prior to his time, but very very similar work that we are both doing. He's able to do that right now,
Mm.
and I know he loves it. But when I was there, it was of course it was a different environment, and again we're talking pre-pandemic, so
Oh, right.
a lot of in-person programming. I actually got to handle I was in charge of the Best Buy grant that we had there. So I was putting on different events as well, just to incorporate more of the community involvement. So we would invite other community members to join and see of the work that we were doing. So very similar, very rewarding. And I'm happy that he's there to be able to carry that on.
Gotcha. Yeah. I didn't realize you guys were at the same time, but that's great that you guys or that you got to have a slightly different experience from
Hmm.
before the pandemic because I know he had talked about how different it was for him going into it during the
Hmm.
pandemic.
Hmm.
You mentioned how rewarding it is. I was going to ask you about some of the most rewarding parts of your career because it seems like you've
Hmm.
had so many different opportunities to work in different communities and really like make a change there. So can you share some rewarding things that you've done?
Hmm. Yeah, I think one of my favorite memories of working at HHF was my um colleague and I. We were able to drive down to Calexico, which is down in the border, and we were there for about a week, doing programming back to back in different schools, and just seeing how the kids lit up. We were able to deliver the curriculum in Spanish, and to
Mm.
really just be able to expose them to a new way of thinking was incredible to see. I still remember. I actually have some photos on my LinkedIn that I always just look back at, and I think back that I hope that they are able to carry that on still to today. But I'm happy to have been able to be kind of that spark, seen that spark in them, um, in their like potential future endeavor into
Yeah.
computer science.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. What a cool and unique experience to get to
Hmm.
do that.
Hmm.
Now, so you had mentioned already a little bit about like civic engagement and your involvement in that. Obviously, the primaries are coming up at the time
Hmm.
of this recording, and one thing that we are always very like passionate about and really want to do with this podcast is kind of encourage people to vote in the primaries and to be knowledgeable about what they're
Hmm.
voting on and what kind of things are being presented for us to make changes on. So
Hmm.
would you mind talking a little bit about your experience with like civic engagement and why it is
Hmm.
important for all of us to be involved in that way?
Of course, yeah. So mine civic engagement experience really goes back to my time in college. I was privileged enough to get a work study position at the University of Laverne for the Office of Civic and Community Engagement as a freshman. So for 4 years, I was able to work and develop my skills in that office as a student ambassador, if you will, and just encourage students to continue their civic engagement responsibilities despite maybe being away from home.
Hmm.
So on campuses, you have uh, different people from different parts of the state as well as from the country coming to one university, really focusing on their career or their education, but civic engagement is still plays a big role, and sometimes students forget that. So my job then was to really focus on getting students to be civically engaged, and since then I've just really focused on it as much as I can, because I do truly believe that we can make a difference. Our policy makers are not always doing what is right all the time, and they need to be reminded that they are there to serve the community. And again, it's important to have conversations, and when people are doing the things that are great for the community, then it's important to also be part of those conversations to see how can we keep that going. So again, why is it important? It just really plays a pivotal role in all of our lives, whether we like it or not. Again, elections still happen, whether we like it or not. And it's just so important that we have a voice. And it doesn't take long. Now in California, we get to receive our ballots in the mail. You have about a month or so to fill it out. And there's so many resources out there to learn about the different propositions, anything on the ballot that you may not be aware of and would like to learn more about.
Yeah, do you have any like specific resources you would recommend? Because I know,
Mhm.
like for me, sometimes I feel like I don't know enough, and I
Yeah.
try to, but I don't know if you have any recommendations of what people
hmm
can go to when they feel like
hmm
I feel like that's an excuse for people not to vote as well. I don't know what I'm voting on. So like, what's a good way to
Yeah.
really understand what it is that's being presented?
Yeah, great question. One, I always refer back to the official website. So if you go onto the California Secretary of State, excuse me, website, you can find everything on there. Everything from the propositions, the candidates running for local, state elections that will be on the ballot. Everything is on there. There's other websites that I use a lot. I used to volunteer for Voto Latino, and they're very involved in all levels of government, and you can
Mm.
find more information there that may align more with your values. And of course, there's plenty of others, but those are the two that I always refer back to. There's organizations that also, let's say you're really focused on environmental justice. I belong to an organization called Nature for All, and they're always advocating for civic engagement, and sometimes they will put out on their newsletters or on Instagram, Facebook, just recommendations of where to get more information or how to vote. So there's plenty of information. Again, it just really depends on if again, if you're new to like measures and things like that, maybe the state website would be best bet to start getting more information. And then if there's organizations that match your values, then you can definitely refer to those to be able to um, use that as a guide.
Gotcha. Thank you for sharing that. That was helpful. Now, this might sound like a silly question, coming from someone who is trying to encourage people to vote.
Mhm,
But I know there's a lot of us out there like thinking of the primaries and elections,
mhm,
and I know that the primaries are important because they're more connected to our own communities, right? It's not on
mhm.
a national level. It's more of your like where you live, what is going to affect your specific community. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah. So we're definitely not voting for president this November,
Right.
but it's definitely still so important. We're talking, voting for your local city council, local school board members, all of these elected officials have such a strong um, pull in our policy process, and they are the ones ultimately making the decisions that affect us all, as small as what streets get fixed at what time, or any changes to school schedules or anything like that. And we just are entering or leaving pandemic phase of depending on how you see it, pandemic is still here, or there's still certain levels, but those are always decisions that are being made by different stakeholders in the city. So it's just so important to be involved.
Right, because these are the elections that I feel like we really end up seeing the results of on like a daily basis. Like it
Correct.
affects our daily lives because it is our
Hmm.
surrounding communities that are affected by these.
Yeah. I know there's at least in my city, I know there's in other cities as well, there's water board elections. That's a big concern.
Hmm.
Um, in California, water shortage is a reality, and
Yeah.
um, how like getting what's the word, like healthy water, if you will,
Yeah.
or safe water,
Clean, yeah, clean,
clean
safe
water,
water.
is so important. And I know in my city, that's always been a concern. Just there's there's unfortunately, every once in a while I get this letter that says, the pH levels, or this is a
Hmm.
little off. Not to be concerned, but but just letting so again, why it's so important that we have the right people in those positions to ensure that our community is safe.
Right. And so you, like you said, you've done some work with education and things like
Hmm.
that. And I know when I was a student, I always felt like I didn't really need to know much because I couldn't vote anyway. Is there anything that you would recommend for students that do feel that way, where they're not old enough yet, but do still
Hmm.
care about these kinds of things, what they can do to try and make an
Hmm.
impact as well?
Yeah, definitely. As soon as you said that, I think back at my cousins. They're all been helping me with my campaign, and they are not 18, but they're very much aware of what's happening in schools in their neighborhood, and they have things to say. They have opinions, and it's important to listen to them,
Right.
because at the end of the day, they are highly impacted.
Hmm.
And I think for those of you that may not be quite of age to vote yet, you should still definitely reach out to people that hold these positions, because they are there to listen. They have, just like in school, there's office hours. You can always reach out to the superintendent, the principal, anyone else that may be able to address your issue, and just
Hmm.
talk to them and share your concerns. I know recently, in California, we went through quite a bit of heat a few weeks, or about a month or two ago. We went through such high heat. And my cousins were like, hey, it's not enough that they just offer me ice and to cool down. And I went to the local school board meeting and shared with them that this is a big concern. They're still expected to have um, practices or a physical education, but they don't have enough shade space or access to water all the time. So all of these, there's someone there to listen to those concerns, and they can take
Hmm.
action for you, um, with you. Hmm.
That's awesome. Yeah, the
Hmm.
the heat in school is definitely like such a big concern. Did any change come from that?
Um, so after that school board meeting, there was a few parents that shared the same sentiment,
Mm.
and reflected on how, uh, you know, there's been times when their kids came up to them and said that the air conditioner wasn't on because they were told it was broken. So since
Mm.
then, a lot more conversations have been started as far as um, what can be done about it. And I know, and specifically in my district, yeah, there's some bond measures, some bond money that has been allocated for that, and it's in the works for to ensure that all air conditioners throughout the district are fixed. So I think it helped in the sense that they are aware that it's not just one student feeling this
Hmm.
way. It's many families and students that are aware and are helping push that agenda along.
Right. I mean, that's exactly how change starts too, is you have to
Mm-hmm.
start those conversations, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that's just the starting of those conversations. That's awesome that your cousin like made that
Mm-hmm.
that decision to really fight for it and
Mm-hmm.
start that wave of change.
Correct. Yeah.
I love that. That's awesome. Yeah, I think a lot of kids need to hear that their voices do matter and that they
Mm-hmm.
can start things like that. Like something that may seem small like that, it's really not, and they
Mm-hmm.
can make a change and trying to figure out how to make that change. Like you said, going to the school board meeting and like
Mm-hmm.
those things are accessible and possible for kids to make changes.
Correct. And if there's any opportunity that you have to get involved, I know, there's what is it, local um, elections within your school level or your grade level or within your school. Get involved, and it doesn't need, you don't have to necessarily run for, president, vice president, secretary. Just be involved as much as you can, go to meetings. Any way
Mhm.
that you can get involved would be so helpful.
Yeah, and kind of on that same note, for kids who do feel like there's something that they want to like
Mhm.
discuss and something that they want to change, do you have any recommendations for who they should go to first? Like
Mhm.
if they're kind of having trouble finding the right resources
Mm,
or finding the right person, do you have any
yeah.
advice for that?
Yeah, definitely. Your teachers, your principal, and as mentioned, your superintendent are your best resources. I would probably use that kind of chain of command as far as, like, sharing your concerns with the teacher, and with the teacher potentially, I'm very grassroots focused, so I since I was little, I knew of petitions, and
Mm,
that's something that it's still very valuable and works. So if all of your classmates get together and say, hey, um, our books are very old, we would appreciate new books in this subject area, or we would like to learn more about this, a petition can go a long way, and share it with your teacher. The teacher can then share it with the principal. And then at the end, your superintendent should definitely hear about that.
mhm.
And attending those school board meetings again is so important. I see when I go to school board meetings, there are students there giving updates of anything happening and sharing their concerns. So there's definitely opportunities for you to get involved.
Awesome. That's great advice. Thank you for sharing that. One of the other things too, kind of shifting gears just slightly,
Mhm.
that we like to talk about on the podcast and the guests we bring on is everybody we talk to does so much for communities like you do and trying to help others and do things for others to make change. And we always ask like
Mm.
how do you take care of yourself while you're also trying to help others in the communities you're
Mhm.
working with?
Mhm. Yeah, great question. That's so important. Um, the burnout is real, and it's important to definitely take care of oneself. And that can look so different for so many people. I
Right.
always have conversations with friends, and self care for some of them is taking a walk. For some of them, it's having a coffee at the end of the day, or beginning and end of the day, whatever works for people. I think for me, it's a little combination of everything, but it's like I try to do my walks with my best friend, and I. We get to meet up at least once a week to just talk and really
Mhm.
just talk to each other as humans, and
Mhm.
realize that, as much as we want to give of ourselves, it's also important to take care of oneself. So having those authentic conversations with family, friends that you trust, is so important. Just relying on your community, I think, is the biggest advice I can give in order to keep the work going, because you always have to remember, why is it that you want to do what you want to do. And it always
Mhm.
comes back to, at least in my experience, it always comes back to my family and friends. Like, I want to ensure that more people have access to resources and opportunities, and I
Mhm.
can't do that without taking care of myself and my community.
Yes, that's exactly right. Yeah, I think
Mm.
that's what's so important and something that's a common theme with a lot of people that I've talked to is realizing that you have to take care of yourself in order to make a change elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for sharing that too. And like you said, it looks so different for so many different people, which is why I always love asking that question because
Mm-hmm.
it's always different. Like we have people who like to like take moments to be alone and isolate and just be with themselves, and others who like to surround themselves with others. And so I always like hearing those different answers.
Mhm.
Well, thank you so much for being here, Jacqueline. I learned a lot from you, and I hope everybody goes out and votes after listening to this.
Mhm.
And hopefully some kids also took something from this and can
Mhm.
start making changes in their own communities. So
Mhm.
thanks again for everything and sharing such knowledgeable answers with us.
Of course, and if I can just again reiterate, definitely get out and vote. You can do so now until November 8th. And again, it's so important that you vote down the ballot and don't leave anything blank. If you have any questions, go back to websites and learn more about it, because each one of those is so important. And I definitely encourage you to get more involved and just really take care of yourself and your community along the way.
Right. Thank you so much for
Yeah.
sharing that. That is great advice to everybody listening, for sure.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you again to Jacqueline for sharing such useful information with all of us. Listeners, I hope this conversation has helped to encourage you to vote in the midterms this week, so please be sure to get out there and vote. Thank you for listening, and talk to you all soon.